Good morning, everyone. So, after a gap of some 2 to 3 days, okay, I think you were very happy that I haven't uploaded any FS classes. So, fine. No situation is too much or continuously happy moment for anyone. Okay, reality is we all have to face the things. So, come back to the reality. Today, I'm again here with your factoring topic. Okay, where in earlier classes under the factoring we have seen the meaning, we have seen the function, we have gone for advantages, we have gone for disadvantages or limitations. Okay, today we will check what are the different types of factoring available in the market or available with your factoring financial institutions. Okay, and depend upon your, that means if you are a company, if you want to go for or you want to utilize the factoring services. Okay, so depend upon the company requirement and need, company can select any one factoring. Okay, and even sometimes the factoring institution also used to give you different options based on or depending upon your customers background, financial background and historical records. Okay, so let's check on which are the different available. Okay, very first we have here recourse factoring. Okay, as you can read here, in this client had to buy back unpaid bills receivable from factor. Okay, so recourse means it is a kind of, you can say that most common type of factoring. Okay, if the company's customer does not pay the invoices, okay, due to any reason, okay, that also within a recourse period, for example 90 days, okay, then company will be responsible to make the factor whole. Okay, that means if I am talking about you, okay, you have to repay the amount to the factor for the advance you have received, and plus you have to give the factoring discount also. Okay, so you can say here no debt protection is available. Fine, so make sure such type of factoring you are entering with those type of customers who are for whom you have a confidence that they will do the payment of your invoices. Okay, because if your customer is not going to do the payment of invoices, then you have to make good the losses of the factor. Whatever advance you have taken, you have to return, and same time you have to pay the factoring discount also. Okay, so that is your first type. And next we have non-recourse factoring. Fine, so non-recourse factoring, if your customer, okay, for whichever customer you have entered, okay, if your customer does not pay due to insolvency or bankruptcy, okay, the factor does not need to be made the whole by you. Okay, because factoring without recourse, factor will absorb the loss. Okay, here factor will absorb the loss. Okay, but always keep remember that this non-recourse factoring, it's not for your all type of customers. Okay, they used to provide this type of services only for the selected customers where the default chances are very less. Okay, and maybe it will arise due to insolvency or bankruptcy if in future within your recourse period, then you don't have to take tension, factor will bear your losses. Okay, so in shortcut what you can keep remember, recourse factoring, okay, if the invoices are unpaid by the customer, okay, you have to do the advance payment back to the factor. If we go for non-recourse, if the customer is not going to do the payment of invoices to the factor, factor will bear the loss. Okay, this is your first two type. Next, domestic factor. Okay, so very simple actually. Okay, customer, client and factor. 3 parties minimum. Okay, in your factoring, customer, client and factor. And if all 3 reside in the same country, then it is known as your domestic factoring. Fine. Next, we have a export factoring. Okay, sometimes it is known as your cross border factoring also, where you will have the 4 parties. Okay, in domestic, just now we have seen, in domestic we have 3 parties. Okay, customer, client and factor. But in your cross border, we'll have the 4 party. One is your exporter, that will be your client. Okay, then importer, that is your customer, and then exporter factor and importer factor. Okay, 4 parties who are exporter, okay, that is your client, importer, that is your customer, and then both parties one factor, that is exporter factor and importer factor. And as 2 factors are involved here, so sometimes we used to call it as a 2-factor system also. Okay, so shortcut what? When in any factoring arrangement all the party resides in the same country, then it is domestic. But if the factoring is arranged for exporting transactions, where your exporter, your importer, exporter factor and importer factor, 4 parties are involved, then it is going to be your export factoring, which just now I told you, it is also known as your cross border, or it is also known as your 2-factor system. Fine. Next to check, disclosed factoring. Okay, disclosed factoring, if you can read here, factor name is represented on the invoice of the goods or services and ask customer to pay the factor. It means the customer, whoever your customer for from collections of which customer you have arranged the factor. Okay, that customer will be having the information about the factor. Okay, factor name will be indicated in the invoice by the supplier. Okay, and supplier will tell the customer to do the payment to your factor, that is your disclosed. Fine. Or even sometimes it is known as a notified. Fine, where you are going to inform about the factoring arrangement to your customer. Undisclosed, just opposite of that. Factor is not mentioned on the invoice. Okay, that means you are not going to, or your customer is not aware about the arrangement of your factoring services. Okay, customer thinking that they are doing the payment directly to the company. They don't know about the arrangement of factor. Fine. Where actually you are not going to notify your customer about the arrangement between you and the factor. Okay, because maybe you want to keep your relationship confidential. Okay, so that is your undisclosed. Shortcut what? Disclosed, arrangement of factor notified to the customer, undisclosed arrangement of factor not notified to the customer. Okay, next to check out advance factoring. Okay, advance is paid to the client by factor against uncollected receivables. Okay, that means your factor is going to give the advance, okay, before the actual collection from the customer. And in the meaning or maybe in the functions or features, we have seen that factor used to do the payment of 75 to 80% as the advance. Okay, so even though the receivables are not collected from the customer, but factor will do the advance payment to the client. Okay, maturity factoring. Maturity factoring, what will be the opposite here? Advance is not provided. Okay, advance is not provided until the date of invoice are due to be paid. Okay, you have to wait for the maturity period. Okay, factor will not do the payment, but bank can collect some from the customer and pay to the firm. Okay, Okay, that is your maturity factoring. Now next we have agency factoring. Okay, what do you mean by agency factoring? If you can read here, finance and protection against the bad debts done by the factor. Okay, so it is a kind of, you can say that, non-recourse. Fine. Finance and protection against the bad debts done by the factor, and administration and collection work is done by the client. So the work they are going to divide among themselves. Factor will do some work and client will also do some work. Factor, as you can read here again, I am saying factor will finance, that means factor will pay the advance and factor will give the protection against bad debts, but the client has to go for the administration and collection work by their own. So such type of your factoring known as your agency factoring. Okay. Then we have full factoring. So full factoring, just one line you can keep, remember, maximum services or entire services. It can be collection, it can be credit protection, it can be sales ledger administration, it can be short-term finance, all various types of services which are related to your bills receivables or which are provided by the various factoring. It will be provided by your one factor if you are going for a full factoring services. Okay, you can say that it combined your features of almost all factoring services. Okay. Next, to check out bank participation. Okay, bank participation, as you can read here, fine. Factoring, providing an advance to the client, we know till now very well. Okay, that factor used to provide advance to the client against the reserves maintained by the factor. Factor used to maintain some factor reserves. Under bank participation, what happened? Okay, just for example, assume that factor has advanced 80%. Okay, total value of your factored receivables. Fine. And then client required to fund some other or client required extra money. So 80% your factor has given, that means 20% is your factoring reserve. Now what will happen? Bank will give you 50% on that factor reserve. That means another 10% you can receive from the commercial bank. So at the end of the day, what happening? At the end of the day, 90% provided by the factor and the commercial bank. Okay, so that is your bank participation factoring. Fine. So this is your almost all type of factoring. Kindly go for it. Any doubt, you can ask me. Till then, thank you. Have a nice day.